Welcome to a night in the Asylum. It's Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. As if you didn't know. Time for Talk, Tech, and Tequila with Darren and Jen. Call in live or leave a message at 855-366-9653 or email dilbert@asylum.radio. It's time to take refuge with your friends. Your cocktail and cream puff.
Jen, here we are.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. Oh my God, it's 2 years. Why are we still here, Jen?
Because we love each other so much.
Our special guest is asking the same question. It's Tuesday, February the 16th, 7:30 p.m. You can call in 855-366-9653. And we have a special guest here today, Romaine Patterson from the Derek and Romaine Show. Romaine, say hello. Woo!
Hello, everybody.
There she is.
How's everyone doing?
And of course, Joe is here also, Joe Jordan.
Oh, yeah, of course, Joe. Yeah.
Where was that? For Joe.
This is number 4 for Joe. He's hitting a record.
I'm seeing too much of his face already. I think.
Oh, come on. There was never too much of my face. Come on.
Romaine, we asked Joe to be part of this as a guest for at least 4 or 5 times, but he never wanted to make the trip to New York City because he's in Trenton, New Jersey. So now that he's doing it from home, now he's at home. He can do it anywhere.
Yeah. So. Because COVID has granted me that gift to be anywhere.
COVID anytime, and great technology.
Yeah,
right.
That's
exactly.
Right.
This great technology created by Romaine or pulled together by Romaine.
It's a long way to
I
go.
wouldn't say I created anything. I just have figured out a way to make it all work together.
Yeah. So listen, we got Romaine as a guest, and I wanted to tell Joe and whoever wants to hear the story how this show came to be.
I don't think I even know this story.
I don't think I know.
You were part of this.
I was.
So this is what happened.
Remember.
This is what happened. This goes way back when Derek and I were working at Plan It Out together. That's how him and I met years ago. And after I left the company, I think was already gone, and we sort of lost touch with each other.
Are we talking about the 90s?
It was mid 90s to late 90s, around that time, Jen.
Okay.
It was the gold rush of .coms.
I thought you were making fun of him too.
She is. So I was sitting in my car at one point in the early 2000s or something, and I was listening to Sirius radio, and I hear this voice on the radio, and I thought, that voice sounds like Derek. I had no idea he had a show on Sirius radio on OutQ that they called the Derek and Romaine Show. So they were on there for 12 years total. But I had called in and said, Derek, I had no idea you were on Sirius radio. You must suck at marketing because people that know you don't even know that you're on the radio. But they had a huge following. And then
just because Darren doesn't know.
Well, just because, yeah. Mm-hmm. So they had a huge following on Sirius, and then OutQ was the channel. They dismantled the channel, and so did Derek Romaine. They got dismantled from the network, and they landed on their feet. They're on DerekRomaine.com now. They have their own studio in New York City, DNRstudios.com. And I started listening as a listener for the show for probably about 5 years ago or something. And at one point, they had somebody by the name of Jeff, ADD Jeff, who was helping with technology and the website. And
so wait, hold on one second before this ADD Jeff guy.
Yes.
So Derek and Romaine left Sirius and started their own show.
Their own,
yes.
Well, it was still the same show, but it was off Sirius and it was on basically their own network.
Online.
Yeah.
And so you followed them somehow? Or
I did.
How did you know where they went?
I followed them as a listener because I was already on Sirius at that point, and then I knew that they had left and went online. Oh. And Jeff, ADD
we keep
Jeff,
our listeners informed, even if we are horrible at marketing.
A lot of the listeners actually didn't know they left.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So ADD Jeff was running the technology, and he had to take a little mental break. So Derek asked me if I could help with, I guess, their website or something. So I said, sure, this sounds like fun. So I ended up helping out here and there. And then I was on the show several times, and I thought, this is really pretty cool to sit on this, even if I'm not saying anything, because Derek won't let me. it's a fun thing to sit there and hear them banter live and in front of you and interject where you can. So that was the beginning of it.
Oh, I got to listen to one of those shows.
And then at one point I thought, gee, I really want to try this. And I thought, what would Derek and Romaine say if I wanted to try this? And I thought they're probably going to laugh in my face. And I think I asked Derek first, and I asked him.
That was the mistake.
I said, how can I maybe have my own show? And he said, well, if you have something to talk about, you could do it. And I don't remember all the conversations about how I wound up on dnrstudios.com, because I thought if the roles were reversed and a nobody who had no audience, nobody knew them, asked if they could have a radio show on their network, my answer would be, no, are you crazy? So
I bet you
how did this happen?
You wrote a really long, detailed email explaining.
I probably did, because I'm very long.
Oh my
about
God,
emails.
you know about Darren's
Dude, Darren?
emails? And how he writes
Well, let me just say, can I just comment on that?
encyclopedia?
I worked with Darren for what, 7 years?
You did.
And at first I tried my hardest, and he was my manager at first, and I tried my hardest to read all his emails, and he was very intimidating with his deep voice and everything, reading my emails, and I have all these processes and whatnot. So I tried my hardest at first, and me being me, by the second month, I was like, I'd get halfway through, and I'd be done. And so we had this other producer there, Kelly, right? Remember Kelly? Right.
Yeah.
So
she was there for
there
a little bit before I left.
So she would give me the clip notes on
My
Darren's
emails. She'd give you like 1 or 2 sentences.
I'm like, listen, Kelly, I just need the crux of the email. Give me, this the 3 sentences of what it's about. But
Romaine's learned. She just delete next. He'll call me if he needs me.
I will get a paragraph in, and then if it starts to go over my head, I'm like, okay, and I'm done.
All the things about setting up the podcast and whatever you're doing with that, I'm just like, delete. I don't.
Oh, well.
I read it all. I wouldn't be prepared.
Yeah.
So, Romaine, do you remember any of these conversations when I came to you guys and asked if I could do this?
Nope.
That's the safe answer.
That's just the truth. I don't remember anything, though, in all fairness. I mean, yeah, I don't. You can ask Derek. I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything important. I don't remember anything. It just goes in one ear and out the other. I'm very bad like that.
So I think both of you have been very gracious, because we don't have a following, or we didn't, and I know this takes some time and bandwidth for DNR, but it's been a great ride for 2 years. Jen and I keep asking
I can't
ourselves,
believe it's been 2 years already.
when are we going to be fired?
I mean, we don't really fire people around here. We try to encourage people to keep growing and to develop and build a brand. And, I mean, it takes a lot of work. And I think that's one of the things people don't understand about what we do is, in order to become a successful show, in order to become a successful brand, you really have to always be looking at how you present yourself, the content you're creating, how you are, promoting that content. And once you do get a few listeners, how you turn those listeners into a cult following that will go out into the world and tell them about who you are, wear your t-shirts, go on your trips, do all of those things. And it kind of, it's like a snowball effect. Once it gets rolling, good Lord, for the person who gets caught up in the way.
What do you think was the turning point for
you
guys? As far as like, what was the turning point for the Derek and
for
Romaine
our show?
Yeah.
I mean, I think so when we first started, neither Derek or I had ever done radio before. So like you guys, we started out, they gave us this like concept of what they wanted us to do. But back in the day when we started at Sirius, there were maybe 70,000 subscribers, which is not a lot. With as many channels and networks, that they had, like there was so much to listen to. Trying to get 5 years on your show was a real challenge. So, Derek and I, we were supposed to have this like call-in advice show. Like that's what they wanted us to do, but there were no calls. So what do you do when you say, call me now, and the phone doesn't ring?
You advise each
by
other.
the way, our show was 4 hours long. So when you're asking someone to call you for 4 hours and the phone rings twice in 4 hours and you're supposed to have a call-in advice show, that doesn't work. So Derek and I really had to learn trial by fire. And in many ways, we were very lucky because we were able to have that experience of learning without like a whole lot of stress of like, you have to meet these numbers, you have to do this, or you're going to be fired. And so what we did is we developed a show that made us have a good time. Like if we are having fun talking to each other, our audience is having fun listening to what we're talking about. Like we tried all these artificial ways of like trying to bring in interesting guests, but if we weren't interested in them, if we weren't interested in the conversation, it sucked. And so we weren't having fun. The only time our audience really started, where it turned, is when we just started doing the shit that we liked and had fun doing. And then all of a sudden our audience started growing because they're like, oh God, have you heard these two crazy people and the shit they're talking about? I can't believe anyone's talking about this stuff, but we were having a blast talking about those random things. And that is where, that was really the turning point for us, was really understanding that we're not, as much as we're doing a radio show for other people, we're really not. We're doing a radio show for ourselves that entertains us. And as long as we're entertained, our audience will be too. So we're just a couple of self-centered narcissists, essentially. And once we realized that, we were good to go.
Jen, we're not self-centered narcissists, are we?
I mean,
well, I think anybody who's trying this has to have some element of that.
I was going to ask you, Darren, like what made you look at what Derek and Romaine were doing and think, gee, that could be me.
Make it look easy. That's what it is.
Because they do make it look easy.
Am I wrong, Darren?
No, you're right. And before we actually got involved in this, I didn't realize how much goes into it. Even for an hour show once a week, which we can't even get to once a week, Jen.
Listen, it is. I know when we were in the studio, the dynamic was so much different, so much better, more lively. And it was an adjustment trying to just hear your voice. And I think now with introducing video recently, it may even take it up a notch and we're able to actually, interact with each other like normal. Again.
Yeah, which
I didn't even want to is really important in radio. And I think this is something people don't understand because like Derek and I have been doing radio now together for 18 years roughly. And we could do this. We could do the show without seeing each other because I anticipate what Derek is going to say 5 minutes before he does. And so, and it's the same way. Like we just know when we're going to jump in or jump out. But it's because we know each other so well. We've been doing this for so many years, for so many hours every day that we really truly understand that. But I think for new shows, if you don't have that visualization between like co-hosts, I think it is a real challenge. And I think that's why has certainly challenged shows in many, many ways.
I think that's why Jen and I did okay the first couple of years because we knew each other and we always had a good rapport at work. And when I thought about doing the show, I thought, who could I possibly pick who would be good on the air and who could talk about things, whatever they are, and who could have a good time and laugh.
Right.
Somebody who was a female. And Jen was the first person I thought of.
I checked off all your boxes.
And I thought, if I call her and ask her if she wants to be a co-host of some podcast, she's going to say, what? What are you talking about?
If you recall, you sent me, you didn't call me. You sent me like a massive text.
Like, oh, not even an email, a text.
I didn't remember the text.
The whole idea and everything. And I was like, is he drunk? What's happening?
I probably was. Yes. That's when I do my best work.
And then we spoke. But yeah, it's been interesting. And I decided to do it because I've never done any kind of podcast or video, anything. And I always thought this would be a way for me to listen to myself, work on the work on the, the speech issues, and also figure out ways to kind of keep a conversation going which will help me in my, day job. So
listen to yourself. But you said you never like to listen to yourself. I thought you don't listen to these shows afterwards.
I tried in the beginning, and remember when you were doing the Google stuff? Yeah, it's really brutal. It's so bad. And
yeah, you can't listen to yourself after the fact. Derek loves to do that shit. I'm like, no, that is a horrible idea.
Torture.
I do. I try and listen to it, but I get annoyed when I listen to it because I don't enunciate the way as good as Jen does. That is how I need to
try to listen to myself recently, and I told this to Jen. I sound like a unemployed beach bum living, on the beach somewhere, and like.
But Joe, you are
Should
an
I
unemployed
tell you
beach
that you
bum.
kind of look like
But
one too? Because
Yes, you should.
So I check all the boxes with that, right? I mean,
Your voice
Listen,
matches the.
Joe
it
is looking
does. It really does.
Joe
I'm like,
does.
wow, I
You
really
do
didn't realize. I do surf.
and
I
you
love the
are a beach bum, and you're unemployed.
I know.
wow.
Not for long.
Hanging out in the beaches of Jersey or I don't Trenton.
I'm
Do they
surfing
have
in the
beaches?
cold and the snow, right?
So I had asked Derek and Romaine for their advice, and Katie, when I first started this. And Derek's advice was basically, if we have something to talk about, we should do okay. And we first started talking about technology because we knew tech, but then we were like, we're bored with doing just tech. It's more fun to talk about other BS that's happening in the world. So that's how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, because you have to have fun doing your show. If you're not having fun, the show's gonna suck.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And he also said you should book people who have a following, because if you get them to retweet what you're saying about them, or you get people to say something about your podcast on air, your audience will grow. And
that's probably the hardest part, I think.
It's hard to find good guests, but the best shows we have been the ones that have had guests on that we wanted to hear from. And most of those that did really well were about alcohol or stupid things like sex toys or whatever the case might be.
Yes.
Right, Jen?
Oh, the sex toy one. I remember that. That was so hard to no.
Yeah, I think you were embarrassed about it. It's like, come on, just loosen up, Jen.
Yeah, for God's being inappropriate is really fun, Jen. You should try it.
It's like, how do I?
Because that's what I'm known for.
Hey, Jen likes to talk about her
hairless. She was so serious about the
time.
sex toys. Though. She was very medical.
She was. She was too serious for the topic, but it was a fun time anyway.
Yeah.
My kids are listening.
So Katie's advice was that we should get to the tech part first, not the BS, because people are going to tune in for what you are for the tech part, and they'll get to know you afterward. So we tried that, and I guess it worked for a while, but then we just kind of got off any kind of organized subjects with tech, and so it is what it is. And Romaine's advice was basically, I asked her for something, I guess a few months ago, and she said, consistency is helpful because we were absent for at least a week out of the months in the history. So that brought me to the next point, which is, what makes it difficult. Romaine already knows this, and it's a lot of work to put on one show. And we tend to do things that are last minute. So we think about a topic maybe a couple of days before, and then we try and do research on it. Jen is usually better at it than I am because she's very organized in what she wants to talk about when she's the person who came up with the topic.
Facts.
Me, maybe not so much.
You're
sometimes
prepared.
I write
I feel
long
like you're
emails.
prepared.
Yeah,
I
sometimes.
think you're prepared. You're maybe the issue is you're over prepared. So you're maybe a little robotic.
Like those long emails. Okay, Jen, I get the
way too
point.
much credit.
Jen.
I have read the things. Here is what I found.
Great. That is a great Darren. That's how I do Darren. I am Darren. I have learned.
Here we go. I'm being attacked on all sides.
It's the truth, though.
That's why we love you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's move some questions to Romaine.
Okay. So, I am the star after all. But
you are the star.
The attention on your 2-year anniversary show. I agree. Yes, thank you.
So Romaine, when you started all this, did you consider yourself a natural on air, or did you need to practice certain things? What made you better?
Well, I mean, yes, I've always been a very good public speaker. So speaking comes naturally to me. I could talk till the day is done. I mean, like, it's crazy. So I wasn't worried about that aspect of doing radio. I didn't know Derek very well. In fact, I knew very, very little about Derek when we first met, and we were paired up and we were expected to do this show. And we had a very strange dynamic early on that took some time to navigate. And then once we had unified, we were an unstoppable pair. But I think just learning the ins and outs of just how to do a great show certainly took some practice. And I mean, Derek and I didn't do a good show, in my opinion, for at least the first year. Like the first year we did an okay show, but after that first year, we'd kind of found a rhythm. We'd kind of found what worked for us, and then we were good to go. But I mean, there certainly was a learning curve because radio is a very specific, like most radio listeners, because we were doing traditional radio. We weren't doing podcasts. This was before podcast was even a thing. And before people could listen on demand and things like that. So, with the average radio listener, they're going to get in their car, they're going to listen for 15 minutes and then they're going to disappear. So every 15 minutes has to be something super compelling for whoever that listener is, if you want to keep that listener as a repeat person, right? Mm. So you can't ever get stale in a show when you're live like that. You always have to be providing good, great, amazing content. And so we had to learn how to do that. We had to learn how to convince people to call into the show. We had to learn how to interact with people once they did call into the show. Because that's like the interaction between us and our listeners is so much about who we are. And who we've become over the years. So yeah, there was a learning curve on that. But in terms of like coming up with topics and just talking about stuff, that I could do in my sleep. You can't get me to shut up.
Do you guys like meet or kind of regroup after a show and talk about,
no,
I like
never.
This, I didn't like that?
Never. Did you ever do that?
In fact, I mean, maybe in the early days, a little bit. And we've always had so Derek loves spontaneity in a show. He hates like pre-planned bits and things like that. He hates that stuff. So we were and Derek, if Derek hates something, it's just not going to happen on the show. I've learned this. I've tried to make him like try new things over the years. He just does not like to try new things. So, I kind of, that was probably the hardest adjustment for me, is like, I was always like, let's try this. And he's like, no. I'm like, okay.
What's one thing that you wanted to try that he didn't?
Oh God, there was so many things over the years that I wanted to try. Like sometimes I want to like do like a bit, or sometimes I want to do like a man on the street type thing. And Derek's like, no, that's stupid. We're not doing that. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, where you like send someone down on the street,
accost somebody and just like, I want to talk to you.
People on the street and do interviews and things like that, like just crazy shit. But Derek was like, he just really wasn't into a lot of that kind of stuff. So we didn't. But like, and so show prep wise, believe it or not, this is what we do for show prep. And we used to, in the early days, we used to prep all kinds of crap. We'd come in with a stack of stories, of papers, of things we wanted to talk about, and then we never got to them. Because we would always end up talking about something else inevitably. But really what we do and what we've done probably for the last, I'd say 15 years, is Derek will have a list of topics. Sometimes there's 5, sometimes there's 20. I usually have 6 or 7. I don't usually have more than that. And there'll be things that we found throughout the day, things that are interesting, like the crazy story in the news that we want to talk about, or maybe it's the Britney Spears documentary or whatever it is, right? And we'll just list those topics on our topics. And then when we're doing the show, if we get stalled, we look at the list and then we just pick something off the list and then we go into that. And usually Derek picks, I put the stuff on the list and then Derek just picks what we're going to talk about. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And sometimes, a tangent, you'll be going on a tangent. It'll veer off in a whole other direction that you didn't even, you find yourself talking about things you hadn't even planned on talking about. Sometimes a caller will call in and they will completely redirect the show into a different direction. And the key for us is you just have to kind of go with the flow of wherever the show is going to go, because it's going to take you places. You just don't always know where those places are going to be.
Is there like a certain subject that he said, hey, Romaine, we don't talk about this and it's understood? Or is that kind of something that
yes, there are definitely things we don't talk about. So for instance, Derek does not like to talk about his personal relationships on the show, like his sex life, if he's dating someone. Like he might give you a nugget here and there, but he's not going to go into any kind of detail. Where I'm like the exact opposite. I will tell you the intimate details of my last therapy session with my wife and how she doesn't want me to touch her butthole. I mean, I will tell you anything and everything, but Derek is like, oh, hell to the no. So there certainly are. And like, there are some things I don't talk about on the show, but it's very few and far between, where Derek has a lot more personal boundaries than I do.
The only thing personally he talks about on the show is basically his roommates. You hear about those all the time. He does
talk about his roommate, and he does talk about like his eating habits. He does talk about some deeply personal things, but for the most part, his personal life is pretty off limits, which is fine. I don't mind.
You guys talk when you're not on the show? Or would that take away from the content that you would have?
We used to hang out all the time. Like in the early days of our show, we used to hang out after the show. But then what we realized is the more we hung out, then we'd only have the same things to talk about. So like we come into the show and be like, oh, so last night I went out with Derek, and Derek like last night I went out with Romaine, and then there was nothing new and interesting. So we realized we have to go live separate lives and come back and share those separate lives with each other. So we do a lot more of that now. And we talk. So because of COVID, we've instigated this thing where we have a 3:00 meeting every day where we talk on the phone for 10, 15 minutes. And usually these days, it's not even about the show anymore. Now we talk about like the state of affairs with our business, you know, what's happening with this cruise, what's happening with this show, you know, just logistical stuff. But that's about it. Like we don't talk a lot outside of the show. Everything happens on the air because it's better that way. And sometimes you have to stop yourself. Yeah, Jared, how often do you guys talk?
How often do we talk?
We don't talk much off the show. We text off the show, and usually about like, what are we going to talk about? Or how long we think Joe might last before we don't hear from him anymore.
Oh,
we have a
you gotta save the good stuff for the show.
Yeah, we do.
So,
in fact, she started talking about some things before we started tonight, and I said, talk about it during the show. One thing I wanted to give her a hard time about is the fact that she's got her screen set so she's got her background hidden. It's like, what is going on, Jen? What are you trying to hide there, Jen?
Her house is messy.
It even blurs what I'm drinking. It's like
no, we want to see when you're drinking. That huge trough.
That is a huge fucking drink.
How are you standing? What is that?
Oh my God. That's a margarita.
Is that tequila?
No, this is I don't know how to. Oh, here it is. This is a gin and tonic.
Oh my God!
Nice.
Wow, Jen.
Yeah. So
gin
it's mostly
for
tonic. I know, I'm getting old. It's time.
And Joe's usually drinking whiskey by this time. He's not having anything tonight. Oh my God!
Yeah, I have my whiskey.
You alcoholics!
It's whiskey and water. That's a big pour.
I can't drink because I have to drive home.
Whiskey, water, and ice. Very little whiskey. I'm not like Jen. I don't pour a whole bottle of whatever you're drinking.
This is
tequila.
I can
use more than others.
Build my biceps with this. I mean,
yeah, that's a big glass.
So Romaine, I asked you a question. I texted you. I said, be prepared to tell us something funny. Like, what's one of the most embarrassing moments in the show that you can remember? And you said, I don't know.
No, I did come up with something. I'm trying to think if I even have. I don't know if I have the audio of it. Hold on, let me see if I have it. I think I might. So, because I think I can play my audio over my computer. I don't know if I can or not. I'll try. Anyway, I did come up with something. So it's a kind of funny story because Derek had gone to Salt Lake City to go skiing with his dad. And they were skiing, and they skied down a ski slope called the Glory Hole. Right? And so
I'll bet they did.
So this is back in the day when my mom was still alive, and she was in her mid-70s, let's say. And she listened to the show daily, religiously. And I always was mortified because our show is filthy. Like it is filthy dirty. And so we're sitting there on the show and we're giggling over this Glory Hole thing. And because it's just fucking funny about how Derek and his dad skied the Glory Hole together. And
that is so
like,
gay.
We were just howling and the innuendo was flying left and right. And so my mom called me that night and she left me a voicemail. So let me see if I can play it. And you guys, part of it. And hold on. I don't know if you'll be able to hear it. Let's try it. Now, were you guys able to hear that?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll reenact it. She goes, now, honey, I hate to be an idiot, but what's a glory hole? My 70-some-year-old mother calls me and leaves me this message about how she's been listening to the show and she wants to know what a glory hole is. And I'm thinking to myself, how the fuck do I explain to my 70-some-year-old mother what a glory hole is? This is the most inappropriate thing. And I had to say, of all of the moments where I was just like, Jesus Christ, why is this my job? I cannot believe this is my job. I can't believe I now have to explain to my mother what a glory hole is.
I mean, if it was
that
today,
was probably my most embarrassing moment.
You could email her a link to a porn where they have a glory hole.
But I couldn't have done that with my poor mother. I mean, she was so sweet and innocent. She was this little Catholic woman who had many children, but she was very, very innocent, my mother.
What did you tell her what a glory hole is?
I told her the truth because I mean, what am I going to do? Lie to her? I'm like, Mom, a glory hole is a hole where men stick their penis through it and then they get sexual pleasure from a total stranger. And my mom's like, I didn't want to know that. And I'm like, well, you asked.
Joe, have you been in the glory hole?
He's like, my kids are listening.
I quickly texted them. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Daddy's my life, Joe.
Daddy's not a bad person. I'm a good guy. I swear. They're bad people I'm talking with, and
they're gonna be like, "Hey, Dad, what's a glory hole?" You'll experience my shame.
Now I gotta explain that mess tomorrow. Thanks.
So speaking about your mother, when I was in the studio maybe a year ago before COVID, and I was sitting there, I was like really tired. I had like 3 hours of sleep the night before. And I don't remember what you guys were talking about. And I turned over to you and I said, what do your parents think of that? Or something like that. Completely forgetting that both your parents were dead. It's like, and then you said, my parents are dead. And it's like, oh shit. I can't believe I just said that.
My father never
talked about it.
Yeah, my father never knew me when I did radio because he was dead before I started radio. But my mom, I mean, she did. She listened every day when we were on satellite radio, and my mom was very supportive. Believe it or not, she loved what we were doing. And yeah, she was very, very supportive of my career choice.
I can't get my mother to listen.
It was a good career choice.
You can't get your mom.
Well, no, she's not really interested in my sister.
She's like, Darren, you're boring just in general.
Shut up. My sister, I think, influences
won't listen.
She's a religious fanatic, my sister, so she doesn't want to listen.
My siblings don't listen. And even when like at the height of my fame, my siblings are like, oh yeah, okay, you're so famous. And I'm like, you know what? Kiss my ass. How many of you have had a celebrity play you in a TV movie? How many of you have commanded this huge audience for satellite radio? I'm like, screw you.
Wait, back up. So somebody played you in a TV movie?
Christina Ricci
What
did.
movie? Ooh. And who played you?
Christina Ricci played me in the HBO version of The Laramie Project.
Oh wow, that's very cool.
No, Joe, she's a big deal.
Joe? Wow,
I love Joe. Jen, you're like, Joe, she's a big deal. I'm not really, but
no, I told you the story when I was traveling to LA or something, and I got into an Uber, and I was like, I need to get to my hotel. It was a Tuesday because I'm going to be doing a podcast with, Darren, and it's part of the Derek and Romaine show, and he's like, oh, I love them when they were on Sirius. And I was like, oh, what? Yeah.
And he didn't know you had an online show. You should have told him, Jen.
Yeah, I should have.
Oh, I know, because we're really bad at, promoting.
The marketing, that's right.
Marketing side, yeah.
In all honesty, we really are horrible at it.
This is what we're trying to do.
If there's one thing I wish we had help in, and because I'm the queen of minions. I get people to do things for me for free all the time. Like I just have this ability to get people to do shit for me. And this is the one thing I wish I had that I don't have. I wish I had someone who would just be like, Romaine, let me take over all of your marketing. Let me just help you. Because clearly you're an idiot that doesn't know how to do it, and I will do it for you. Or like a PR person, just someone who'd be like, I'm just going to take you under my little wing and I'm going to do this for you because I love you. And I'd be like, yes. Because trust me, I have minions in every other department that I've ever needed, Darren included. And I get people to just do stuff, but this is the one thing that's lacking in my life that this and a graphic designer. I really wish I had a full-time graphic designer because I have people I beg to do things for me, but then I feel guilty begging them all the time. But I wish I just had one that was just like, I got you, and just did everything I asked. Because, I'm horrible like that.
He's your...
Joe, are you hiding for a reason? Joe, our graphic designer for JK.
Joe doesn't design anymore. He oversees.
I am more than graphic designer. That was an insult.
He's all about the
I'm a creative director. I'm a creative director. I'm hands-on.
Creative directors are very delicate about actually doing any design.
No, I love doing. Right. I love doing. No. I love doing the work. Keeps me relevant. So.
I like doing the work.
I will say I love my graphic designer people. I have a couple that I work with regularly, and they literally save my life all the time. They're so special and so wonderful to me. They're some of my faves. but I wish I had more because I always have graphic design work. Always.
Well, the
Marketing
funny thing
and
is,
PR
like,
stuff?
I have a lot of, a lot of friends who are like, hey, Joe, can you do, X, Y, and Z for me? And it's always, oh, I'll give you like $50. I'm like, well, this is going to take me like 2 weeks to do.
Are you talking about me right now?
Is that like 2 cents an hour? Oh,
Like,
that's right. You
pay
had done that to
you?
him.
I need to
Wait,
eat.
I'm supposed
and,
to be
like,
paying these people? I'm the worst.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's like everything's for free. And I'm
Your
like,
payment is my friendship. Stop it.
oh, well, that doesn't, well, that
You
falls
two
short,
bickering
let me
like your
tell you
man
that
and
much.
wife.
I know.
All right, Jen, tell us about your most embarrassing moment relating to the show, on or off air.
It was
Because I know what it was.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I'm sure you guys remember. We were so excited because Darren, you were kind enough to get tickets to the cruise. Not the cruise. It was like a booze cruise.
The booze cruise before Project
yes.
X-19.
And I don't remember if it was like, it wasn't cold because we weren't wearing big coats, but I remember it was pouring rain. Like,
It was
really hard. And I told Manuel, you need to come to Penn Station. We'll walk over to wherever the boat was. And by the time he got to the Penn Station, because trains were delayed and all that good stuff, I was like, we can't walk. We have to like get in a cab and get there. And we're looking at the watch. I was like, we're gonna make it. We're gonna do it. We get out, we run, and as we're running, literally the boat is pulling away from the dock.
And
we're
they're
like,
waving to you.
yeah,
Bye.
and we're like, just wait, just hold it. And they're like, it has already started moving.
Yeah. Honey, the
they
ship has left.
And we're like,
It's like, bye, bitch.
yeah, they were like, bye, bitch, and then left. And then we're like, well, shit. And so we had to like find other things to do.
So we kept
were
looking
supposed
for
to meet
Jen
up
on the
with
boat,
you.
couldn't find her. Nowhere to be found. I thought maybe you drowned.
Darren got wasted because we were like texting each other.
Oh, he
I was
wasn't
Oh my
alone.
God.
I was like, I missed the boat. Let's
Me,
hang out
Pat,
after.
and our friend got wasted together. It was 3 of us.
Everybody got wasted
Yeah.
on that trip. That
I've
was
only
that booze
seen-
cruise was a booze cruise.
I'm so sad. Are you guys having another one? Maybe not this year, but next year.
We do have a New York cruise coming up again. I don't know whether we'll do another booze cruise, but I wouldn't be against it
Mm.
because
Okay.
it was fun.
This time you're buying your own tickets, Jen.
Yeah. I brought you tequila as an apology.
You did do that. You bought me 3
I
bottles
did.
of tequila.
I
That
was
made
like,
up
I'm
for it.
so
Nice.
sorry. So sorry.
Kiss, kiss.
That's a
was
good
bad.
apology gift, if you ask me.
All right,
Yeah,
I got more Romaine questions.
Ooh.
Oh, okay, go
now that
ahead.
she's here. So Romaine,
All right.
Mark
Yes,
from Minnesota,
Darren.
formerly Mark from New Jersey.
Yes.
Why
Who's that?
do you put up with him?
What does
Why
he
do
do
you allow
first
him
of all?
at all? He's somebody who threatened
Mark-
Romaine.
All right. So Mark is he's one of our, if we had a whack pack, Mark would be the king of it. Okay.
You
Like,
do have a
that's
whack
the way I
pack.
would describe the whack. Like, he is like the wackiest of our whack pack here on Derek and Romaine. The thing about Mark is, and because Mark is clearly got a drinking problem, clearly has a lot of addiction problems. He's a hot mess 99.9% of the time. But what I've realized is that sometimes there are people in our audience who they how do I put this gently?
Challenged.
Like, they're just some people who need us, and they need us in a way that's different than other people. And I feel for Mark because I think Mark has a particularly challenging life, and I try to show a little kindness to people like that. And sometimes this is one of my personal faults because I really struggle to be mean to people who need that extra little bit of kindness. But clearly Mark needs that. And so our show is one of those few outlets for him, I think. And even though he drives many of the listeners crazy, and even though he drives me personally crazy, I try to show him just a tiny bit of kindness in a world that probably isn't very kind to him.
Yeah, you're probably
You know,
right.
That-
so you
that's
so you
my
don't
answer.
know him personally. You just know
I've
him
never
through the
met
show.
him. I would kind of be afraid to meet him because I think he's problematic in a lot of ways.
I thought you met him.
No, I've never met him. I would be. I mean, he has threatened me, like with
Exactly.
violence,
Jeez.
because he gets drunk and stupid, and then he doesn't remember it.
He gets drunk
Yeah,
and then
he's-
like calls you and talks to you on
Yeah.
air.
regularly, and he's not just drinking. He's got several addictions, but it's problematic. But again, like I said, I try to, over the years we've had a lot of listeners who need that little extra bit of kindness. And one of my favorite ones, oh God, I love this guy so much. In the early days of our show, we had this caller, Ryan from Connecticut, and Ryan would call into the show, and he was clearly like 19, 20, 21, in that range, right? And he always sounded just high or drunk, or something was weird about this kid. But he was so funny when he would call into the show because he was just a fucking mess. And I loved his calls, and I would often have to interpret his calls because nobody else could understand them but me. And so I'd be like, okay, what I think Ryan is trying to say is blah, 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 blah. And come to find out, the reason he always sounded high is because he was, but it wasn't because he was doing recreational drugs. He had an incredibly aggressive form of cancer that kills all but 3% of people.
Oh, shit.
And so he was undergoing all this horrible cancer treatment. And we were the one place that he could tune in every day and find a reason to laugh and find a reason to be silly. And then he could call in and interact and feel like he was a part of that. And so we didn't know that for the longest time. And then eventually it came out. And I was always like, I'm so glad I was so nice to him, even though his calls were crazy, because he clearly needed us and found us at a time in his life where he needed that outlet. And so you kind of can't be mean to people when they call in and they're weird or whatever, because you don't know where they're at in their life. You don't know what their situation is. And chances are, if they're acting wackadoodle or they're crazy, there's a good reason behind it. You just may not know what it is. So that little bit of kindness goes a long way.
Have you ever hung up on someone?
Oh, all the time. I'm not kind all the time. Some people deserve a good dial tone. I hang up on people all the time. And I'm an asshole to some people when they deserve it.
All right. So where did the term hooker hotline come from?
We just kind of nickname things on our show. Like listeners get nicknames, like all kinds of weird shit happens on our show. And so, we started doing this thing. When we started doing the new show, we realized that a lot of the listeners aren't listening live, because this is the new way that podcast listeners and radio listeners consume their audio. A lot of them like it on demand. So we have what we call time shifters, but we wanted the time shifters to be able to feel like they could still be a part of the show, right? Even if they weren't listening live, they could still call into the show, because that's a big part of our show, like the interactivity between the listeners and ourselves. So we created this phone line with the help of Kevin, one of our listeners from Minnesota, and he created this whole hotline system for us here at DNR 2.0. And so utilizing that, we started taking these calls, and then I don't know how it became the hooker hotline. I'm sure Derek just made it up. But that's what he started calling it, and it stuck.
So we have our own phone line, Jen. Did you know that? That goes into the same numbers at DNR Studios.
I knew that. It's been 2 years. Come on. I knew that.
I hardly ever check the thing, because who's gonna call us and leave a message? Well,
you'd be surprised.
I checked a couple nights ago, and sure as shit, we have our first hooker hotline call on January the 19th. You want to hear it?
Yes.
You must think we're still the tech asylum. Here it is.
Oh, this is scary.
Yes. Hi, Darren and Jen. My name is Tom, and first time caller to your show. I just upgraded to Plus, and I really enjoyed the show, episode that I heard on January 5th or 6th. It was pretty good. And unfortunately, the episode of last week I couldn't play with Kevin. I don't know why, but I'm hoping that'll come on. My question is, just really quickly, I was wondering about the Amazon Fire Stick. I don't know if this is an appropriate question or not, but a lot of my friends have suggested I get it, but I do have cable, and I do have like every channel I could possibly want. So I don't know if it's something that I should get, but everyone's kind of saying like, oh yeah, you should just get it already. And I don't know if that's the case. So I just want to throw it out there. If you had any information on that, I would love to hear about it. Thanks.
So there you go. Our first Hooker hotline call.
It's
Jen.
amazing.
Can I comment on this, please? Because
Yes, Joe.
Oh, you have
Answer
opinions?
the question.
I have opinions. I think he called because I was on. He did say it was one of his favorites. And
No, he said that Kevin was a favorite.
Well, he thinks I'm Kevin. I'll be Kevin. I've been called worse. I think it's because we were talking about streaming services. Remember?
We were.
That was the episode.
Yes.
So he heard me and he had to call.
We brought
Wow.
a star to the show.
Our first call, thanks to Joe.
So what
You
is
are
your
welcome.
recommendation?
You're welcome.
For the what was his name?
So I won up the show.
His name is Tom, but he has a nickname. His real name is Wayward Tom.
There you go.
What does that
There's
mean?
a story there.
What is the story? Why is he wayward, Tom?
I will tell you quickly. We were doing an event at Disney World, and I was walking around like a mother duck with a whole bunch of listeners trailing behind me. And I saw this homo, and he looked wayward, like he was a lost little boy. And I said, "Are you a lost young man?" And he goes, "Romaine, I've been looking for you everywhere." And from that moment on, he's been called Wayward Tom. And trust me, that nickname fits him in every sense of the word.
And I probably met him before, but I can't place who it is.
Oh, you've probably met him on a cruise trip.
Yeah.
Like the time his pants dropped right in front of the restaurant. Oh God.
I didn't
I
see
see the
that,
pants
no.
drop in front of a restaurant.
Well, he was wearing shorts, and I can't believe I'm telling the story. He was wearing shorts. And the matron, he's like, "You can't come into the restaurant in shorts. You have to wear pants." And he goes, "Well, I'm just going to drop my pants right now and go put some on." And then he was trying to pretend like he was going to drop his pants, and then he accidentally pulled his shorts down, and they fell to his ankles.
Oh,
Thank God he was wearing
Oh,
underwear.
my.
But it was, I'll never forget it. It was very funny.
So,
Well-
Joe, what's your answer to his question? Why
Yeah,
get
what's
an
your answer
Amazon
for
Fire
Tom?
Stick if he has already cable?
He has all the channels he could possibly want, apparently.
Well, I mean, if you're going to cut the cord, yeah, I would get the Fire Stick or some other, smart TV or,
But his
I
point
mean,
is he already has cable. So
if you already have cable, I mean, what's the point? Like I said, I'm ready to switch back because the streaming services have gotten way too expensive, and it's you have to buy so many different the Fire Stick, and when it's not even the Fire Stick, it's the different services. So it's like Hulu and Netflix and
Well,
NBC.
the only people
Everybody
I know,
has it all adds up, and it gets very expensive. So
the only people I know that have the Fire Stick are the ones that apparently it's the easiest one to hack or
yeah,
whatever. To get free
yeah.
channels.
So you can hack those, and I actually have a hack. I shouldn't say that, but I know somebody who has a hacked version.
what do you
of
want to
the
hack
Fire
it for?
Stick. Well, you can
So you get free stuff, free channels.
Oh.
right. So
This could be a whole show.
Yeah, I don't recall the exact name of. I don't
Romaine
recall the
is
exact
cringing.
name of the application you can install on top of the Fire Stick or in the Fire Stick, but you get free movies, sports.
Oh, we're going to talk afterward.
So like back in the day, just so you know, we had DirecTV. This was when you had a box and a card that you would put inside the box to kind of authenticate and give you whatever channels you're supposed to have. And my dad had connections. This is when I was like 12. I remember vividly. They would give these cards to, let's say, the black market. I have no idea where he put it. And he would get it back with all this hardware attached to it. And you'd stick it into the DirecTV box, and then you could watch all the channels all the time. But then every so often they would zap your card, and then you wouldn't have access. So you'd have to get another card and then do the whole thing. And I feel like the Fire Stick is the new version of that.
I didn't know you were such a criminal.
It is. So
I modded
have
my Xbox. Come on.
They have like an IP protection thing because they'll like check your IP and they'll like zap you, so to speak, like you just said, and you lose service for a little while. So you have to install some other software to protect your IP address from being detected.
You're like VPN.
So my question,
exactly,
or my
and that's
answer
like
to
another
Tom,
$30 a month.
my answer to Tom is a lot simpler. He has cable already. He's not going to change. But if he wanted to get like Netflix, Prime, or Hulu, things that were not integrated with his TV, if he does not have a smart TV, that would be the only reason why he would get an Amazon Fire Stick or a competing brand.
Yeah, that would be the only reason. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason otherwise. If you have a smart TV, which they're pumping out right now, they come preloaded with all these applications. So the Fire Stick is really, in my opinion, a little obsolete. Unless, like we said, you're going to hack it and get extra, free stuff. So If you get a free,
By the way,
we do not recommend such things.
By the way, Kevin
recommend it, but
Kevin was on a former recent episode, but we were talking about the Oculus Quest 2 virtual reality and video games that you can play with it.
Romaine looks thrilled.
I know nothing about these things. That was all like a language I didn't even understand.
She's like, I'm texting people. What are we talking about?
Oh, Romaine.
Like, what is happening right now? I don't even know where
why'd I
am.
waste my time on the show with these losers?
Why are we not fired
What
yet?
I think we found Romaine's most embarrassing moment on radio right now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I got a serious question for Romaine and the rest of you. So if you were invited to a party, say near Flemington, New Jersey, and it was marketed as a post-vaccine mask optional party in the late spring to summer, would you go if you liked the person? And if you went, would you wear a mask regardless, assuming you had the vaccine? You got all that?
I've had the vaccine. I think that's a complicated question because
there's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot there. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think once people, if everyone there has had the vaccine, sure, I would go, and sure, I don't think I would wear a mask if everyone had already been vaccinated. Because I think at that point, if you're in a group with that everyone has been vaccinated, that's like being in a safe zone, right? That being said, if some of the people had been vaccinated and some people hadn't been vaccinated, of course I'd wear a mask because the last thing you want to do, wearing a mask isn't about me. It's about the people around me, right? I don't want to give my shit to everybody else. So, yeah, but I mean, it's hard. I get, I mean, at this point I've got so much COVID fatigue. I mean, I'm not someone who likes to go to parties, but in this case, I'd probably be like, hell yes, get me out of my house before I murder my wife and child.
So Pat and I were talking about having one. But we're like, what would be the rules? How would we tell people they could do this or that? For the same reasons, because we're so sick of being here by ourselves.
But I think if it's an outdoor party and you are at like a fire pit or something like that, and people can keep a little bit of distance between them. So, because during the summer this year, during COVID, we had people over to our house, like our neighbors and things like that. We would be outside sitting around a fire pit. And, when you're 6 feet apart, 8 feet apart, like it never felt unsafe to us.
Right.
Because we were doing all the right practices. And I felt like, and my wife and I have been very lucky, knock on wood. And unlike some of my friends who have not been as lucky.
How about you, Jen?
So if I were vaccinated and all of the people were vaccinated, I think I would definitely come and would be okay with not wearing a mask. But the thing that kind of I'm on the fence is that the people that are vaccinated may then go home with parents or people with secondary conditions,
and they'd be carrying it.
Get them.
That's a valid point. Yeah.
And that's my only we may be safe as a group, but then somehow it could. Right.
There is research happening.
It can still infiltrate.
Mm-hmm.
There is research going on that it shows that you're at reduced risk of transmitting it if you're vaccinated, because assumingly it's probably because the viral load is so much lower because you've been vaccinated that you probably would not transmit it, but they haven't done enough of testing yet.
Well,
but this
even the asymptomatic people, they've shown that they really don't pass the virus. It's the people who are symptomatic that pass the virus, who don't wash their hand, who are irresponsible. They go out, party, whatever, and they don't care. So I mean, those are the people who are transmitting the virus. So I mean, even if you get the vaccination, you're still going to carry that virus. It doesn't protect you from carrying that virus, and you're not more likely, but you're still going to pass the virus. Like Jen said, I mean, you might have it, you might go home and pass it along to your grandparents or something, whom are the ones we are trying to protect, is that older generation. So,
like for me, eventually we're
all going to have to make this decision, because eventually the world is going to open back up. Like, there's no way we can continue this indefinitely. So,
no. So,
what is the bar? Like, how many of us have to be vaccinated before the world resumes?
I have an answer to that. So it has to be 75% of the American population have to be vaccinated to gain what they call herd immunity.
Right.
So they're saying, we'll be safe by the summertime, around that time. So we'll be all good. So even if 75% of people are vaccinated and there are other 25% who are not, we're in the clear. So,
and the good news is that the elderly and the people with, secondary conditions are the first to get the vaccine available to them. So by the summertime, the assumption is most of them have already gotten the vaccine.
So I'm not vaccinated. I don't know if I'm going to, but if there was a party and
why would you not?
Wait, what?
Why would you not, Joe? Let's hear.
You're not invited. You're uninvited.
You're not coming to this party with us.
Here's the thing. Let me ask you this. All right. So everybody's vaccinated. I am not. That vaccination is a protection for myself to getting sick. It does not stop me from transmitting that virus to you. It doesn't. It doesn't at all.
It reduces the chance.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
Look up the data. It does.
I did.
All right. So look it up again.
Sorry, Joe,
So I would go if it was an outside party and we were 6 feet apart and social distancing and all that good stuff. I definitely go.
You're not invited anymore, Joe.
You're not invited.
I'm always.
How hard is this to understand?
You have to be vaccinated.
I
partied. I'm making the rules.
I am not. Listen. I'm going to be that 25% that's not vaccinated and get the herd immunity, right?
Are you against this vaccine in particular?
No, not at all. So my girlfriend's been vaccinated. She got her second shot maybe a week or two ago.
Is she medical?
She is a medical worker. Worked through all the COVID stuff and all that mess. She saw a lot, and God bless her and all the those medical workers and everything. But for me, I'm a scaredy cat.
Pussy.
I saw how
I got zero tolerance for that excuse. Zero.
I know. She got so sick over it, and all the people that I know who received the shot got so sick. And I'm a big wuss. It's a day of sickness. I'm going to be like.
You are a big wuss. We already know about you.
Listen. I am not thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my significant other who has to put up with me while I'm sick and dying. Take me to the hospital.
I'm sure she'll be like, I will take care of you while you're being a little
bitch.
No, she won't. I'm saving us all.
You're saving us all.
I'm not thinking of myself.
But you've gotten measles and all the other vaccinations. Were you did you have a bad experience with a vaccination before that you're this way? Or?
No, not at all. I've gotten all the shots
Did the doctor spank you too hard after you got the last shot in your behind?
Did you not get a little lollipop? What happened? I don't understand.
They don't put in your astra, they put in your arm.
Oh. Well, then I don't want it.
Oh, you want it. Let me tell you.
Oh,
brother.
Wow.
But I think that's a personal preference and decision. And, I think anybody who doesn't want to get that shot, shouldn't be ousted or ridiculed by any means, eventually. But like we said, if we're dealing with the data, if most of the people who are vaccinated are covered, then we're good. I'll
give you a reason to vaccinate aside from like the herd immunity. If you ever want to travel around the world, you need to get a vaccine.
Well, if that's going to happen, then
Joe's a hermit.
I'll have to do that. I'm never leaving my house.
If you ever want to leave Jersey, I don't know. If you ever want to leave the U.S., get a vaccine.
I'll put a like one of those like backgrounds on my Zoom, and I'm leaving. Like you did Hawaii, and I'm in Hawaii.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Listen, we're almost out of time. I've got one other question for Jen. But Romaine, thanks so much for coming and joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. It's been fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for teaching us what makes a good podcast after 2 years of us doing a podcast.
2 years, Jen. All right, Jen, this is the last question.
I took some notes, though. That was good stuff.
Did you guys learn anything from
Romaine?
We did.
Okay.
What was your...
Darren needs to stop being a robot.
What was your favorite show, Jen?
My favorite show, I'm kind of biased, obviously, but it's the one where Pat and Manuel came and we had drinks together. But a close second was the one where we had the guys for 199 proof, and they kind of talked through
very good.
Their whole really scientific way of analyzing drinks. That was pretty interesting.
And the show with Manuel and where Pat came in and we were talking about Aldez tequila was one of my favorites. And I remember we had paper sippy cups with caps on it because that was Romaine's rule.
Manuel was so nervous, by the way.
We couldn't have anything in the studio unless it had caps on it. So we were drinking alcohol or tequila with ice and in her little
in a coffee cups.
Cup. It was a good time.
Welcome.
It was awesome.
All right, that's all we got for tonight. Thanks for coming, Romaine, and we'll see everybody next week.
Have a good night.
Later.
Good night.
Bye.